The 21st of February, 1965, 3:05 p.m. 7 gunshots echoed through the Audubon Ballroom. Malcolm X staggered backward, blood spreading across his white shirt. The 5 assassins watched him fall to one knee, then to the ground. 400 people sat in stunned silence. Some screamed, others prayed. A few started running for the exits. Norman Butler lowered his smoking shotgun. "It is done," he whispered to Thomas Hagen. But then something happened that nobody expected. Something that would haunt the killers for the rest of their lives. Malcolm X started laughing. Not the laugh of a dying man, not the delirious giggle of someone in shock. A deep, knowing laugh that sent chills down every spine in that ballroom. He pushed himself up to his feet, straightened his tie, looked directly at the 5 men who just shot him 7 times in the chest, and said 6 words that changed everything. Did you really think that would work? What happened next wasn't just a survival story. It was the most brilliant psychological warfare display in American history, because Malcolm X hadn't just survived an assassination attempt, he'd planned it. 3 weeks earlier, Malcolm had received the phone call every civil rights leader feared, the death threat that meant his time was running out. The 21st of February, the Audubon Ballroom, you will not walk out alive. But instead of going into hiding, Malcolm X did something unprecedented. He went to the movies. Not just any movie, Goldfinger, the new James Bond film where 007 uses experimental technology to outsmart his enemies. Malcolm walked out of that theater with an idea so audacious, so dangerous, that even his closest allies would later call it insane. If James Bond could use gadgets to survive impossible situations, why couldn't Malcolm X? The next morning, Malcolm made a phone call that would change everything. "Dr. Anderson, it is Malcolm. I need to ask you about something we discussed years ago, that experimental bulletproof fabric you were developing for the military." Dr. Richard Anderson was one of America's most innovative surgeons, a man who'd been quietly working on protective technology for soldiers in Vietnam. He was also one of Malcolm's oldest friends. Malcolm, that project was classified and highly experimental. More experimental than what they're planning to do to me. Dr. Anderson was quiet for a moment. "What exactly are you proposing?" "I want you to make me bulletproof, not with a vest that shows under my clothes. Something internal, something they'll never expect." What Malcolm was asking for seemed impossible, but Dr. Anderson had been working on precisely this type of innovation. Ultra-thin titanium mesh that could be surgically implanted under the skin, flexible enough to move with the body, but strong enough to stop bullets. "Malcolm, this procedure has never been tested on humans. The risks are enormous." "Doctor, I am going to be shot by 5 professional killers in 3 weeks. I think we can agree that the risks are already enormous." The 10th of February, 11 days before the assassination, Malcolm underwent the most dangerous surgery of his life. 4 hours in Dr. Anderson's private clinic. Titanium mesh implanted beneath the skin covering his vital organs. The material was thinner than paper but stronger than steel, designed to distribute the impact of bullets across the entire surface area. When Malcolm woke up, Dr. Anderson showed him the X-rays. Incredible. "The mesh is completely invisible under your skin. But it should stop any small caliber rounds, Malcolm. You are literally bulletproof now. Should stop. This is experimental technology. We're in uncharted territory." Malcolm smiled. "Doctor, I've been in uncharted territory my whole life." But being bulletproof was only part of Malcolm's plan. The second part was even more audacious. Malcolm knew he couldn't just survive the assassination attempt. He had to use it to destroy his enemies completely. So he did something that would have shocked everyone who knew him. He reached out to the FBI agent Robert Peterson had been surveilling Malcolm for years. Peterson thought he was meeting a desperate man looking for protection when Malcolm called the secret meeting. "Agent Peterson, I know exactly when and where they're going to try to kill me. If you have credible threats against your life, Mr. Malcolm, we can provide protection." Malcolm laughed. "I don't want protection, I want witnesses." He slid a tape recorder across the table. "This contains recorded confessions from 3 of the men planning to kill me. Names, dates, weapons, the whole plan. But I am not giving this to you now." "What do you want?" I want you at the Audubon Ballroom on the 21st of February. I want you to watch what happens, and I want you to arrest the survivors." Peterson was confused. Survivors? Agent Peterson, what do you think happens to an organization when 5 of their best killers fail to assassinate one unarmed man? What do you think happens to their credibility? Their power? Their future? Malcolm leaned forward. "I am going to let them shoot me. I am going to survive, and then I am going to destroy every person who sent them." The 21st of February 1965, the Audubon Ballroom. Everything was ready. Malcolm's titanium mesh had healed perfectly. Dr. Anderson was standing by with medical equipment hidden backstage. Agent Peterson was watching from the balcony. Mike Wallace's camera crew was recording from multiple angles. Malcolm had turned his assassination into the most watched political event of the decade. 3:05 p.m., Malcolm stepped to the podium. He could see them all. Norman Butler in the third row with his shotgun. Thomas Hagen near the back with his pistol. 3 other killers scattered through the audience. Malcolm began his speech knowing that in minutes, all 5 would try to kill him. Salam alaikum, brothers and sisters. Today, I want to talk about the difference between martyrdom and victory. That is when Norman Butler stood up and shouted, "Get your hands out of my pockets." The planned distraction right on schedule. Chaos erupted. The 5 assassins drew their weapons. Malcolm stood calmly at the podium, making no attempt to run or hide. Norman fired first. Double-barrel shotgun, both barrels aimed directly at Malcolm's chest. The buckshot hit Malcolm's titanium mesh and scattered harmlessly. Thomas Hagen's pistol next. 3 shots, center mass. The bullets flattened against the hidden armor. The other 3 killers emptied their revolvers. Multiple rounds, all absorbed by the experimental technology Dr. Anderson had implanted. Malcolm staggered backward from the kinetic impact, blood appearing on his shirt where a few pellets had grazed his arms. He fell to one knee, playing his part perfectly. The assassins approached to confirm their kill. That is when Malcolm started laughing. It started as a chuckle, then grew louder. Soon Malcolm was laughing so hard that tears streamed down his face. He stood up, brushing off his jacket, still laughing. Did you really think that would work? The look of pure terror on the assassins' faces was visible throughout the ballroom. They just emptied their weapons into a man who was now standing there laughing at them. Malcolm pulled a tape recorder from his jacket and pressed play. Norman Butler's voice filled the ballroom. "We kill Malcolm on Sunday. Make it look like spontaneous violence, but it is all planned." Thomas Hagen's voice. "Elijah wants it public. Wants everyone to see what happens when you betray the nation." Captain Joseph's voice. "The FBI knows about it. They're not going to interfere." Malcolm stopped the recorder. "Gentlemen, thank you for that demonstration. You've just proved everything I've been saying about the conspiracy against civil rights leaders." He looked out at the stunned audience. "But more importantly, you've just proved that I am exactly what my enemies fear most, a man they cannot kill." Malcolm reached into his other pocket and pulled out a thick stack of documents. "These are bank records showing payments from the Nation of Islam to organized crime figures. These are photographs of Elijah Muhammad meeting with FBI agents. These are audio recordings of government officials planning assassinations of civil rights leaders." He held up a final envelope. "And this is a complete list of every person who knew about today's assassination attempt and did nothing to stop it." The assassins tried to run, but Agent Peterson's team was already surrounding them. Mike Wallace's cameras were capturing everything. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Malcolm wasn't finished. "Now," he said, his voice growing stronger, "let me tell you what is going to happen to everyone involved in this conspiracy." What followed was the most devastating 20 minutes in political history. Malcolm named names. He played recordings. He showed photographs. He revealed bank transactions. He exposed government connections. Every person who had planned his assassination, every organization that had funded it, every official who had turned a blind eye to it, all of them were systematically destroyed in front of 400 witnesses and national television cameras. But the most powerful moment came at the end. Malcolm looked directly into the camera and spoke to every civil rights leader in America. "They tried to kill me today. They failed. Not because I was lucky, not because God protected me, because I was smarter than they were." He opened his shirt, revealing the titanium mesh beneath his skin. This is what preparation looks like. This is what happens when you think 3 moves ahead. This is how you turn their weapons into your victory. Malcolm smiled. That same laugh that had terrified his would be killers. To every leader watching this, remember, they can only kill you if you let them. Be smarter. Be prepared. Be bulletproof. And to everyone who sent these killers, remember this day. Remember what happens when you underestimate Malcolm X. You thought 7 bullets would silence me. Instead, you just gave me the loudest microphone in American history. The impact was immediate and catastrophic for Malcolm's enemies. Within hours, the assassination footage was broadcast worldwide. The audio recordings were played on every major radio station. The documents were published in newspapers across the country. Norman Butler, Thomas Hagen, and the 3 other assassins were arrested on live television. All 5 confessed within 24 hours, providing even more evidence against their handlers. Elijah Muhammad tried to deny involvement, but the evidence was overwhelming. The Nation of Islam lost 90% of its membership within a month. Muhammad himself was indicted on federal conspiracy charges. The FBI agents who had known about the plot were exposed and fired. Several faced criminal charges for conspiracy and dereliction of duty. And Malcolm X became the most powerful voice in American civil rights. The man who couldn't be killed. The leader who turned an assassination attempt into his greatest victory. Dr. Anderson's titanium mesh technology was immediately adopted by military and law enforcement agencies worldwide. Malcolm X had literally pioneered modern body armor. But the psychological impact was even greater. Malcolm had proven that with intelligence, preparation, and courage, even the most dangerous enemies could be defeated. Years later, when other civil rights leaders faced death threats, they remembered Malcolm's example. Be smarter. Be prepared. Be 3 steps ahead. The men who tried to kill Malcolm with 7 bullets spent the rest of their lives in prison, haunted by the memory of his laughter. The organization that ordered his death collapsed within months. The government agents who enabled the conspiracy were exposed and disgraced. And Malcolm X. Malcolm X lived for another 20 years, becoming one of the most influential leaders in world history. His autobiography became required reading in schools worldwide. His speeches were translated into dozens of languages. The assassination attempt that was meant to silence him had made him immortal. The 21st of February, 1965. 7 bullets to the chest, 7 failures, 1 laugh that changed everything. Did you really think that would work? 6 words that proved Malcolm X wasn't just a civil rights leader. He was a strategic genius who could turn bullets into victory speeches. That is the power of a man who is not just brave enough to face death, but smart enough to make death afraid of him. Malcolm X. The man who laughed at bullets and made history laugh with him.